Welcome, you're watching Head to Head. I'm Antonina Antosha with UATV. Last December, US President Donald Trump abruptly ordered the withdrawal of 2,000 US troops from Syria, saying the extremist group Islamic State had been defeated. The only reason he is wanted troops in the country. As the American forces withdraw, the spotlight has turned to the other nations with strategic interests in Syria's ongoing war. To discuss this, we welcome to the studio today Kirill Mikhailov. He's a researcher at Conflict Intelligence team. Hello, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So, what is the number, if I may ask, what is the exact number of US troops still remaining on the territory of Syria?
This is a really hard question because the pullout timetable, understandably, has not been public, and what is known so far that at least 200 or 400 US personnel are poised to remain in Syria even after their withdrawal.
As a part of a peacekeeping mission?
Yeah, this is done to keep stability in the region. We should read that as support their Kurdish allies, which have been an integral part of fighting ISIS for the past several years. Actually, this timetable and this drawdown/withdrawal has changed so much and so often that one commentator on Twitter used the term a Russian pullout. As you may recall, Vladimir Putin has pulled out his troops from Syria, gone on record saying he has pulled out troops from Syria for 3 times now, and still they remain there and still they are getting killed.
By the way, how many Russian troops, what is the number of Russian troops still remaining on the territory of Syria?
It is, yet again, a really hard question. Paradoxically, we may have to wait for another Russian national election to answer that question. Interestingly, Russian soldiers, they vote en masse, and it's most to 100%. So if you want to know how many Russian troops are in Syria, look at the last election tally at the Central Election Commission of Russia.
That's such an interesting trick.
Yeah, and last time, as of the 2016 parliamentary election, there were 4,000 troops in Syria. As of 2018, after several withdrawals, there were about 3,000 or 3,200 personnel. And that's not counting the mercenaries and the rotating military police battalions from the Caucasus.
Why do you think the decision of US President Donald Trump to withdraw US troops from Syria was so abrupt? What was the actual reason for acting so fast?
You should look at other activities during Donald Trump's presidency, which were also unprecedented. Like he ordered not 1 but 2 sweeping missile strikes on the military installation of the Syrian regime after 2 chemical attacks in 2017, 2018. He is acting pretty impulsively, and this was one of decisions like that. As we probably know, his decision to bomb the military installations was partially influenced by seeing the carnage of a chemical attack on Fox News news show. And here, as reports have said, it was after a talk with President Erdogan of Turkey, who has been pushing for US troops withdrawal, since that would mean that the Turks could push even deeper into Syria and establish a buffer zone against what they see as a terrorist organization of the Kurdish militias, who they claim are closely coordinating with Kurdish partisans/terrorists in Turkey itself. Which means that it is a national security issue for Turkey to combat the Kurdish militias, which are an integral part of the US strategy of defeating ISIS. And this despite Turkey and the US being in the same international alliance, the North Atlantic Treaty.
Okay, nevertheless, Donald Trump has officially announced that the Islamic State has been defeated. How much of it true? How much of a true is this information?
Since over the past several years, Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump have repeatedly announced again that the Islamic State had been defeated. they've defeated it so many times people have lost count, but actually they...
but how true is this information?
One of the last major strongholds of the Islamic State capitulated just last month. It was near the Euphrates River, the town of Baghouz, which was taken by the same Kurdish forces supported by the Western US-led international anti-ISIS coalition. And long after Putin claimed that ISIS was defeated, the Syrian army, the Damascus forces, were still fighting isolated pockets of the Islamic State all over the regime-controlled territory. And even now, as ISIS has lost territorial control, that much is true. The so-called physical caliphate isn't there yet, in there already. But ISIS has gone, to say, back to its roots. The guerrilla activity that they started as the Islamic State of Iraq in the previous decade, and they are going back to those roots. And we now see incidents like that happened in North Syria, where 3 American soldiers, including a woman, were killed in an ISIS suicide attack, and another incident just recently in the Syrian desert where 3 Russian military advisors were killed in an ISIS ambush. And incidents like this are going to happen, which is why we will see continued military presence of the United States and Russia and other foreign parties to that conflict.
All right, I have a statement by Joel Rayburn, who is a Deputy Assistant Secretary at the State Department and Special Envoy for Syria. And he said 2019 should be the year of reality check for the Assad regime and its backers, including Russia, to accept that there can only be a political solution to the conflict in Syria. He also added that the U.S. believes the only solution is political and that by now that reality should have sunk in. Could you comment?
Yes, all sides in this conflict have been at a kind of an impasse, even though the Russia-Iran-Assad coalition has appeared to largely have won the military conflict and controlling almost all of Syria, save the northeastern parts controlled by the US-backed Kurdish militias and the northwestern parts controlled by Syrian rebels and jihadis, and under a ceasefire regime which is enforced by Turkey and partially Russia. But the problem that lies now before Bashar al-Assad is that he has to rebuild Syria and to restore the lives from wartime back to normal, and that's impossible with the backers he now has. The people have been, the people loyal to the Syrian government who are ready to wait over the war to see their lives return back to normal, but now they still have gas prices fluctuations, sweeping blackouts and brownouts, and long lines for vehicles who want to buy gas, and lots of the country lies in ruins, destroyed mostly by the Assad regime. And in this situation, neither Russia nor Iran can provide meaningful economic assistance for restoring the country and improving the people's lives. There, what is needed is Western support, but the West so far has been firm on that for the restoration aid, the precondition should be that political solution, which means a meaningful discussion of constitutional reform, probably elections, some form of power sharing with the political opposition, and Bashar Assad's regime, on the other hand, has been firm that they will not do that. So I think all sides need a reality check here, and to understand that neither the US and the West are able to remove Assad, and Assad also must understand that he cannot keep governing Syria, or he will face the same problems that led to the 2011 revolution that started this bloody conflict.
Well, revolution flared up not only in Syria, it was a number of countries in the region, and Libya is one of them. So what's the situation like in that country now?
Yes, and here we actually have seen, on the heels of kind of bombshell for the region report of the Telegraph that said that Russian Wagner mercenaries which have fought in Ukraine and in Syria are now being shipped to Libya in the hundreds. And I don't really know if this has triggered what has transpired since then, but what we know is that Marshal Khalifa Haftar, who is one of the parties in the simmering Libyan civil war, and who is backed by Russia, Egypt, and the United Arab Emirates, he has started an offensive to take the Libya's old capital of Tripoli, where the internationally recognized government of national accord sits. And the civil war has flared up, and what we know is that Russia has been present there for years. There have been cases like shooting down of air reconnaissance vehicle, of a reconnaissance drone, which was of the same type that have been shot down in Syria and in eastern Ukraine. And there have been photographs which suggested that Russia sent to Marshal Haftar several fighter jets of some other types like MiG-23 and MiG-25. And there have been persistent rumors about the installations of people from the GRU, the main intelligence directorate, who have also been active in organizing the separatists in the east of Ukraine again. And with the GRU probably came the Wagner mercenaries, who are now operating all over the world. And this may have made Khalifa Haftar feel strong enough to assert his dominance over the country.
So we see one constant part here. Russia is an aggressor country and is actively participating, if not orchestrating, the civil wars or revolutionaries, not only in Ukraine, but also in Syria and Libya and so on and so forth. There probably is a common aim to do so. What could it be?
Well, there probably is a common aim, but if you look at the Russian policy at large, their actions, they don't really work together with their aims. Like take Ukraine, with the current election, they have, with Russia occupying eastern Ukraine and Crimea, which have always been the voting base of the pro-Russian presidential candidate. They effectively denied the overtly pro-Russian Yuri Boyko his place in the runoff. Yeah. So these mistakes, they can lead to such things as in Libya, because in Libya, Russia is meddling what the Southern Europeans see as their sphere of influence, like Italy and France, because first of all, they are getting oil from the area, and secondly, Libya is the springboard for many refugees which are now trying to reach Europe, to crossing the Mediterranean, and they have been trying to stabilize that region, and this huge influx of instability that Russia always provides, the Putin regime always provides wherever it appears, it has now interfered with European interests, and maybe given that Europe was pretty happy for at some point to forget what the Putin regime has been doing to Ukraine and Syria, they now have another flashpoint to get their attention to. To
actually keep remembering it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much for coming and clarifying the whole situation for us.
Thank you for having me again.
That was Kirill Mikhailov. He's a researcher at Conflict Intelligence Team. Thank you so much for watching UATV. Stay tuned for more.